learn something. Like what's one thing I'm doing wrong that I know I'm doing wrong that I could fix, that I would fix? It's like, you meditate on that, you'll get an answer. And it won't be one you want, but it'll be the necessary one. And it's often something that will point you to small things. So Carl Jung said, people in the modern world don't see God because they don't look low enough. And so imagine you're in your messy bedroom, and you're sitting on the edge of the bed trying to have an honest dialogue with yourself. And the little voice says, it's pretty disgusting in here. And you think, well, I'm way above such trivial niceties as organizing my room. It's like, well, that's pride. That's arrogance. If you're above organizing what's actually yours, how in the world are you ever going to organize anything else? And so you get on your knees and you think, well, it's time to, take a brush to the toilet. And maybe that's where you start. And that works. That works. You start making those micro improvements, like real micro improvements, real on the ground, actual micro improvements to things that are wrong, you'll improve unbelievably rapidly.
What you're talking about there sounds to me a lot like an overdose of arrogance and also the need for humility. Do you think the Western world suffers from arrogance because of our relative privilege and luxury that we kind of overlook?
Of course. Well, that's a temptation, right? I mean, when the radical lefty types go after people for their unearned privilege, they have a point. Now, the point is, the existentialists called it thrownness, which is that's a Heideggerian term. And thrownness is the fact that we kind of experience life as if we're tossed into it, thrown into it. You're male and not female. You're Hindu and not Christian. You're tall and not short. You have an arbitrary range of talents and an arbitrary range of limitations, none of which, in some sense, you chose. It's the cards you're dealt. Now, some of those are cards of privilege. Maybe you're born intelligent. Maybe you're born symmetrical. Maybe you're born healthy. Maybe you're born into a culture where it's much easier not to be absolutely deprived. Maybe your parents are rich. And so all of that, in some sense, is unearned. Now, along with that comes a good dose of existential guilt. Because at the same time, and this is true for anyone, regardless of their cultural background, the ground we walk on is soaked in the blood of historical atrocity. And so that's on you. Because, people think, well, who's the Nazi? Well, it's the fascist, or who's the radical communist? It's the radical left-wing ideologue. And the fundamental truth of the matter is that's best dealt with as a spiritual matter, is the adversary is within, really, most profoundly. And so you have to take the responsibility for that historical atrocity onto yourself. I was talking to Guy Ritchie this week about his movie King Arthur. It's quite an interesting movie in many ways. And when Arthur, who could be the hero, takes the sword, he's so overcome by visions of his murderous uncle that he can't pick up the weapon. Well, think about that. You have weapons at your disposal, but they've been used by your murderous uncle. How dare you wield them? And the answer is, maybe it's easy just to leave the sword on the ground because you do want to be responsible for atrocities going forward. And don't think you couldn't be. And don't think you might not enjoy it. And so the way you pay for your privilege is with your virtue. I mean that most particularly. You have these opportunities and this existential guilt. And the way you expiate that and atone is by doing your best to live the best possible life you can manage, to speak the truth, to treat people with respect, to abide by the principles of the dignity of the individual, and to put your house in order. And that's how you pay for your unearned privilege. All of us. And we all have our privileges and our curses, All of us have that. That's why it's not useful to be envious of people. You know, you're a young man, you see someone drive by in a Ferrari with a blonde, and you think, my God, he's got everything. And, you know, the woman in the car is a prostitute who's got a cocaine addiction, and her life is just one catastrophe after another. And he's had to lie and cheat his way into this position. And he's afraid that everything's going to come crashing down on him. And that's what you're jealous of. And it's just not that profound. You don't want someone else's fate. Man, your fate's enough. And your adventure's enough. It's plenty. It's more than you can ever fully realize. And so that's also part of the reason that we all believe that the individual has some intrinsic dignity. It's don't be so sure that your position and your room is so damn trivial. It might be your attitude towards it that's trivial. And if you're in dire straits and dire circumstances, just look at how much opportunity you have to make things better. So, not that it's easy. You don't even want it to be easy.
Real quick, I just want to go back on the things I was saying about privileges. It's true. We all have some kind of privileges that in some way you may feel guilty about it. Privileges of where you are, of your lack opportunity, because you know that there are some people that may need that to be in that position, but they just didn't get the chance to be in the position that you are in. And by reminding yourself of those privileges, it reminds you to be humble, to not take it for granted and want to do something great with it, pushing yourself further than you can be and trying to be that best version of yourself, right? You know, like the places that I'm in right now, that's a privilege, right? And I don't want to take it for granted. I want to use it to get better. And by that, not just better for me, better in a sense that if I can push it forward, I can use that privileges that turn into something good, that opportunity that turn into something good to help someone else that is coming behind. And with that, you want to try to live your life to the best, right? Be respectful of others, be humble, right? It's not always about you being on the top, right? Through humility, you learn. Through humility, you connect with other people. Through generosity, those are values that we don't talk about enough. I realize that most of the time when we talk about success, money and all this kind of thing, we tend to glorify the egos, the dark side. I don't disagree of needing a dark side to push over the edge, because it's not going to be easy. So sometimes you need to go into that dark spot to push forward, but we also don't glorify the part where it requires you to be also generous, right? To be a good person, to have good values, to respect, right? Understanding that the position that you are in, you are likely to be in. And if you get a chance to do something good for someone else, do it, type of stuff. So while he's talking about privileges and opportunities, I kind of can relate to it. I know that there are different kind of privileges, and I see that he's leading into the fact of like, don't be envious of someone else's life, because you never know what is going on into someone else's life. In the 38 Laws of Power, I think that's the reason this book is really powerful. It's a book that I didn't finish the book, but when I'm listening to what he's saying, like some of the stuff connects. Where I think in the book it talks about envy, which is let's see, envy. Okay, I'm pretty sure it does talk about. No, it's not in this book. It's in the Law of Human Nature, where it talks about one of the human nature, which is envy. And the advice about envy is pretty much what Jordan Peterson say, that the thing that you see from far away that you are envious of, when you get close enough, it's not as good as what you thought, right? Like, you see someone, like I said, driving a Ferrari with a blonde, nice girl. In your head, it's like, man, this guy is doing so great. Like, I envy him. I want to be like him. Like, and then, but you don't know, maybe this guy is a drug addict, right? And maybe the girl that is with is a prostitute, right? And maybe he has to lie his way to get the money that he got, which down the road would lead to a bad stuff, and himself is not at peace with himself. So it's just this idea. It's like sometimes we see stuff from far away and then it's shiny. It's like, oh, they got it all, etc. Oh, that, oh, the world is not fair. But when you look at it close enough, it's not as shiny or as good as you thought it is. So that's a way to like think about envy and combating your own envy. That's also books that you guys should read. The Law of Human Nature. So very good book as well.
It's more than you.
This part specifically where it was talking about the room, I just wanted to touch a little bit about it because it's something that is, like I say, it does sound trivial. It's like, well, my room, I'll do one if I get the time to do it. But what I personally experienced and I realized is that your environment kind of like gives you the vibe, depending on how you structure your environment, the place that you spend most of your time in. Depending on it, your action will adapt to it as well. Either if you structure your room in a way that makes you want to be more productive, like my room is kind of like a studio. I got book all around. I try to keep it as neat as possible. Whenever I enter a space of work and productivity, it makes me fix stuff. And sometimes I'm just down. I don't feel like good at all about the day, or like you get those times that you don't feel like shit. You just feel like shit. So some of the stuff that I usually do is like, I look at my room, I can see that, oh, it's dirty, I haven't cleaned it in 2 days. Let's start, fixing stuff. I've been putting stuff on my drawer, just like that. So let's start by folding my clothes and then fixing my books, fixing my stuff, dust some of the stuff, fix the bed. And then by doing that, I realize that, oh, it's peaceful. I'm present. I takes my mind about away from all of the worries and all of the things that is going on in the life, and then put it back onto the present moment, which is trivial, but it helps you cope and it helps you stay present.
On that point of